Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. This is the second part of our top 3 color problems that printers had answered a survey about. And the second biggest problem printers were stating was matching spot colors closer than they're capable of. So we're going to cover that topic in today's session. And like always, before we get too much into the section, I'm going to go over some of the new things that have happened with ChromaChecker in the last 30 days. And one of the biggest new things is our new packaging interface. And it's, I know I've talked about it before, but it's essentially a combination of the print inspector interface and the quick checker interface within Capture. So it allows you to measure a combination of both strips and spot colors. So the spot color doesn't have to be in the color bar if you don't want it to be. And it allows you to flip from the strip mode to patch mode to zero in on why a certain patch might not be rendering color the way it should. And we give instructions to the operator in terms of what they need to do to fix it. Like potentially the ink can't get to the color at any density, and you need to reformulate the ink, and it will actually export the data from the ink to go to your ink room. So if you're doing conventional spot colors, they can take that ink value and know how to reformulate the ink to give you the color you need. It's specifically for packaging, as the name says. So flexo, gravure, complex spot assessments for sheet fed offset, and it gives instant reports. You can have combination of CMYK spot and ECG. As I've mentioned, it has intelligent recommendations in terms of what the operator should do, including changing the pressure and things like that. There's MIS integration, which allows you to auto-load job info into Capture from like a MIS system that exports an XML file. You can pop it into the project inspector, and it automatically configures what that job is asking for in terms of the fingerprint, the profile, the color bar, tolerances. All these things can automatically populate. So it's all about automation. And then over time, we're adding secondary variables. So our plate inspector, which we have today for sheet fed, is being adapted to work with analogs type of plate for flexo, and other flexo specific plate related issues are going to be able to be tracked in the plate inspector and linked back to the job. Some other capabilities of the packaging inspector include the ability to measure paper opacity, including white inks. So you can measure paper white, you can measure the substrate white, you can measure the white ink. It supports sphere instruments like our CC sphere, which is really great for measuring things that are, let's say, backlit or second surface. And we support gloss meters. So we support a triangle gloss meter so that you're getting both the color and the appearance of the given object, which is really fantastic for objects that require lamination and things like that. So it is an additional cost, but there's a discount for our existing users. And we've got a couple of users that I know are on the call that are using this today, gotten good feedback from them. So if you're a current user and you want to beta test it for free, we're more than happy to set you up with it. And I'm going to be demonstrating it pretty quick in the presentation in its current state. It's not done yet, so we're still looking for input, but I'll be demonstrating it in just a couple minutes. Now, as always, if anyone has questions, please feel free to post them on the chat for Beth to interrupt me and so I can get to the question. Now, this is a question that keeps coming up, and I've used this slide for a while, but I think people miss the importance of this slide. And it's all about determining a return on investment for ChromaChecker. So Idea Alliance has done studies in terms of what the margin on sales is for printers in North America. And 75% of the printers in North America make less than 2% margin on sales. What that means is 3 out of 4 printers in North America sell a job for $1,000 and they make $20. That's 3 out of 4 printers that are in our country today. That's pretty shocking because that's such a low net profit. Now, what this means in terms of determining if the customer is going to pay for the job or not. If you have a rejected job, not $1,000 job, but if you maybe it is $1,000 job, but in order to get the customer to accept the job, they only pay $800. So it costs you $200 in materials and wages. That $200 loss requires 10 additional $1,000 jobs to cover that loss at $20 a job. So 10 times 20 equals 200. And so in this way, you can't afford a $200 loss. Most printers can't afford a $200 loss. And this is why printers are not making much money. So now let me step back here and say, what determines waste versus sellable print? If I've got a job like this and I'm trying to match it and I match it like this, is that acceptable? And the question is, it's a trick question because some people might accept that and some people won't. And today, if you think about how printers operate, oftentimes conventional printers operate with something called an OK sheet. So you might have 10 operators running 5 presses. And every job, that operator gets to look at the print match and use their own judgment in terms of, is that close enough or not? So number one, you don't have any standardization across your company in terms of how each operator judges a job. And then you've got the salesperson influence on top of that saying, no, I know we can make that better. Do more make ready. I need that to match better. This is insane. And yet this is how most printers in North America work. We call ourselves a color conformance platform because we're the only solution that I know of today that uses this metric, which is based on the 95th percentile delta E that we call E factor. And this metric allows you to quantify what your customers' expectations are for acceptability and what they aren't. And knowing every customer is different, we've already done the research for you to show that if you're within a 3E factor, 95% of your customers will accept the result. If you're more than an 8, 95% of those customers will not accept the results. If you're between the 3 and the 8, which is where most printers live, by the way, and by the way, this sample that I'm showing here, that's about a 5, okay? And a 5 is about a 50% mark of 50% of print buyers will accept this and 50% won't. And this is the cross the finger time where you give the customer the job and you hope that they're going to buy it and pay full price for it. We as an industry can't survive this way. ChromaChecker, we call ourselves a color conformance platform because we determine every print, what is the E factor, and is it acceptable or not based on your company's tolerances and desire. I've got customers that are a 3E factor for everything they do. I've got customers that are an 8E factor for everything they do. Most of our customers are around a 5. But this is the first step to standardizing what is acceptable and what is waste so that you can fix the waste before you print 200 or 2,000 or 2 million samples of this and the customer rejects it and you get into this negative loss that you have, your company has a very hard time overcoming. So we're a color conformance platform. Other software companies are calling themselves color conformance, but they don't define what's sellable and what's waste. They don't do that. We do that. Other companies say, oh yeah, we'll tell you how close you are to Grackle. How? Is it G7 compliant or not? That doesn't tell us anything. You can be G7 compliant and be sellable, and you can be G7 compliant and not sellable. Here's an example of two prints that are G7, and no one in the world would accept these prints. I'm digging out these samples on the fly, but these two prints are both G7, and yet look at those tomatoes. They're extremely different. So just because you are G7 doesn't mean it's sellable. I'm a G7 expert trainer. I train people to be G7. And it's shocking to me when I ask G7 experts, hey, I've got two prints. They're both G7 compliant. Which one is more right, or which one is closer to the Grackle standard than the other? And they look at me like a deer in headlights. They don't know how to answer that. And the answer is E factor. E factor tells us the difference of how close any print is to the reference, such as Grackle, or how close any two prints are to one another. And this is what we can put into our companies and say, hey, Mr. Press Operator, you can't call an OK sheet until you're, let's say, 6 E factor to Grackle, or 6 E factor to the Golden Master OK sheet. And ChromaChecker supports a global OK sheet. So all the operators can be aiming for the same OK sheet to the same level of tolerance or color expectation.
Dave,
Yes.
there's a question.
Yes. What's the question?
If we are using an M0 IntelliTrack, should we be aiming for Grackle 2006 or 2013?
So in that scenario where your IntelliTrax only allows for an M0 condition, I would aim for the Grackle 2006 reference in that scenario. That's a pretty common question. So thanks for asking that. Now, the E factor exercise it comes with any starter kit, and it also is purchasable by users. And the concept is it allows everybody in the organization to see what level of expectation you're trying to match your color to. So what I'm showing up here is a 4, and you see that's a decent match. Whereas this difference, that's an 8. That's not so decent of a match, but it might be good enough for the type of work you do. And we have both a hard copy exercise, which I'm showing in these prints. It's available for $99. In fact, anyone who's viewing this, use the code word Second Tuesday, and we'll give you the $80 price point on it, $20 off, because it's so useful. And I say there's no right or wrong for E factor, but 2 is nearly impossible unless you're tracking all the variables in your process, which include the instrument, because every instrument measures differently from every other instrument, and every instrument actually measures differently over time, and even based on different temperatures. So it's critical to know how your instruments are measuring color. The substrate, OBA levels fade over time, so the substrate color can change over time. Lighting, and we've had sessions on how important lighting is. We've had sessions on how important substrate is. And of course, nip pressures, ink stripes, fountain solutions, all these variables have to be tracked if you're going to try to reproduce color at an E factor of 2 or less, or even a delta E of 2 or less for spot colors, which we're going to talk about as we get in here. So let's get into today's session. And we're talking about the biggest color problems. Spot color is not close enough. Now we're going to talk about this on 2 levels. We're going to talk about it on more of what I'll call a conventional level, which is for sheet fed offset, flexo, gravure, where you're custom ink room configuring the ink that's going to go specifically in the press for a given color, such as, let's say, rich red. So you're formulating this ink. You're not building this ink out of your cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or orange, green, violet for ECG. So when you're doing a real spot color that's going in the press, ChromaChecker has been sort of weak at that in the past, but you'll see with our new packaging interface that's completely changed. We're much more capable at helping an operator adjust the color in a spot color scenario to get the right color the first time, or if not the first time, in a very quick succession based on changing the ink, changing the density, changing the tension, the pressure, what have you. The other thing you need to know is if the color is understand the gamut of the printing condition. So in the gamut of the printing condition, this has to do with mostly spot color matching. So in spot color matching, you will, and you're going to a digital device, you don't have the ink go into the digital device. So you have to simulate that spot color using the combination of inks that's in your printer. So you have to know the gamut of the printer, meaning you need an ICC profile for the printer. And then ChromaChecker can tell you if the color you're asking for is in gamut or out of gamut. And if it's out of gamut, you can actually show the customer what out of gamut means. So if, let's say, the closest your printer can hit this color, this, let's say, T-Mobile pink, the closest your printer can hit it is 3 E factor, which is fairly normal. ChromaChecker has a tool called Spot Color Variator, which allows you to make a PDF of all scenarios of a 3 delta E. And you can print this out and then show it to the customer and say, hey, if I print on this digital printer to simulate your spot color, and if I'm this far off, is it acceptable? And then you get them to sign off on that if they say yes, because now you're not having to hit, let's say, the color exactly. You've got a tolerance of a 3 that you can aim for to ensure that it's correct. Or if your printer can't do any better than a 3 and the customer says no, then you don't do the work for them, or you find another printer that you might have that can reproduce T-Mobile pink to less than a 3 so that you know it'll meet their expectations. These are really key issues. And we're going to go through the Best Buy color library of 18 colors to show you how that works with our spot color scan and my automated measurement devices that we support, which include the ISIS, the Konica Minolta, Miro 9, and the IO. So knowing what the desired E factor is really critical for all these things, including spot colors, as the scenario I just shared with you shows. You need to know how close the spot color is. And things get complicated when you're trying to make, let's say, the same spot color on multiple devices. And this doesn't matter if it's 2 offset presses or a digital press and an offset press. But let's say the best I can get on that T-Mobile pink is on a digital press is 3. And using a true spot color, I can get it within, let's say, a 1.5 on my offset press. Well, right off the bat here, you're going to have variation in these colors over the course of a press run or over multiple press runs. So it's not always going to be a 1. It could be a 1 to a 2 if that's what the customer's tolerance is. And on the digital press, it could be a 2 to a 3. But that's to the targeted spot color. That's each of these purple dots to the bullseye, the red bullseye, which is the targeted spot color. Now, when you start considering that we might have to have part of the document from the digital press mixed with part of the document with the offset press, now, just in this scenario of matching 1 to 2 on conventional and 2 to 3 on digital, you could be, the best case is you're 3 E factor apart, or excuse me, 3 delta E apart, because it's an individual spot color. E factor is more for process colors, for images, for pages. It's the same relative difference, whether we're judging the difference between images or individual spot colors like Ritz Red. But you can see here, you're on opposite sides of the bullseye. So the best case is you're 3. The worst case is you're 5. This is because your offset press is 2 off and your digital press is 3 off. 2 plus 3 is 5. And that helps you understand how hard it is to make multiple printers match. Now, the same thing goes for process colors on multiple printers. We're going to be talking about this in part 3 next month, but the same concept applies that next month's session, problem 3, is making your printers match one another. And it accentuates this issue tenfold because it's all your process colors have to match now. And it's hard enough just to hit the targeted Grackle color space, but now when they're matching one another, they can be on opposite sides and you get bigger numbers here. So if we're wanting to match conventional spot colors more closely, this is where we use our new packaging interface. And the packaging interface will help you understand whether or not the formulation of the spot color ink on press is going to make the color match to the tolerance that has been set. And if not, you can export that data to your ink formulation software to reformulate that ink, put it back into the key and try again. This press operator interface gives the operator a lot more information on how to measure spot color. And when we're dealing with ECG colors, meaning printing with cyan, magenta, yellow, black, orange, green, and violet, this can eliminate spot colors altogether, because my first scenario with a customer using ECG color was a juice box company. And they have multiple flavors of the juice box that they had to print. They printed each one spot color. So the grape, the lemon, the lime, the orange, the cherry, you get the colors. They had to print each one of those one at a time, wash up the station, then print it again. When ECG came out, they were one of the first companies to jump on it, because what they saw was they could gang up all their juice boxes in one run and just do a run that was 20 times longer than any single run, which is where the printer makes money. Set up one time, run 20 times longer, and then you just gang. If you sell more cherry than you do lime, you just gang more cherry packages on than lime, and they get cut out at the end, and you're all good to go. And this was just a huge breakthrough in terms of profitability for this printer, because you save all the ink wash up time, all the make ready, run longer, more efficient, the whole bit. But again, they had to make sure they were tracking the ink stripe, the nip pressures, and everything else to ensure consistency from run to run and job to job. Now, here's an actual screenshot of Ritz Red being produced on an offset press over multiple locations over time. And you see on the left, the bottom left, it's a delta E timeline. And the majority of these are around 2.5 delta E. I'd say, just eyeballing it, the average is about 2.5 delta E. And some of them are as bad as 4, and some of them are as good as about a 1. So that's the amount of, that's how accurate the press is, or how accurate it can be. And then the variation is all this up and down over time and over operator and over press and so forth. Now, let me show you how you can do this tracking a color in ChromaChecker, because it's a fairly new function that, and I don't even think we called out, but I want to share it with you guys here so you can see how it works. So you go into Color Inspector, you go into your assets, and you choose the color you want. So I've got a color library called Ritz. I'm going into that library, and you see here I've got Ritz Red, which is Pantone 186, and I'll highlight that, and it shows me there's multiple tracks, and I'm going to say, here's my tolerances, here's my color. We're going to say color tracking, and when we click on color tracking, it's going to show me all occurrences of this Ritz Red on any printer anywhere in the world. So if it's being tracked by ChromaChecker and it's designated as Ritz Red or Pantone 186, I can see how well we reproduce that on an Epson, on an Indigo, on a Flexo press, on an offset press, you name it. It's all right here. And then, of course, I can go ahead and build a report to send it to Nabisco, the owners of Ritz, and say, hey, here's how well we reproduce your color. So that's a real key capability of ChromaChecker to help brand companies know that that you as the printer are printing their color correctly. Now let's get into the operator interface so you can see it firsthand. So as I said, it's primarily for spot and ECG matching. It's a cross between Print Inspector and Quick Checker, and it works with projects. And I'm going to pop out of here and go into my capture interface, and I'm going to log in as myself. Actually, in this case, I'm going to log in as this. And then up comes the packaging inspector. You see it here. And I choose my print condition. I choose my project. And then all of these variables come up. So this is where we can track what the pressure is, what the sticky back is, what the analox is, what the tension is, what ink goes in which unit within the press. All of this data can be tracked and set up. And when I say start, it now gives me the ability to take my I1, take my color strip, and I'm going to quickly just measure this in. And it doesn't matter if I measure left to right or right to left. It's got a patch recognition algorithm in it. So I'm measuring right to left. And then up the data will come. And it shows me right away, we recommend an ink formulation export. We recommend an ink formulation export. Reduce ink concentration by 26 points to achieve a predicted 1.22, because we're 8.3 delta E here. And I'm going to zoom in on this color first. So with Print Inspector, you can't do this. With Packaging Inspector, I just clicked on that color and it shows me, oh, my color is way here. Here's the parafarb showing me at which density I will get the minimum delta E, and it's showing me at the density of 0.69, I can get a 1.2 delta E, whereas at density 0.95, I'm at an 8.24. So I don't need to reformulate this ink. I just need to back off the pressure to get this ink to behave the way I need it to behave. Now let's go back to the overview again. So here's the overview. Now let's look at the cyan ink. So I'm clicking now on the cyan ink, and you can see the parafarb doesn't get into the green area here, which is my tolerance. My tolerance is set for 3.5 delta E. It's saying, boy, even if you reduce 20 points of density, you're going to be at a 4.2, which is outside the expected match. So that's why it's telling us export the data to your ink formulation software, have it reformulated so you can put it back on press, and you have a good chance of matching this color now. Now, as we go back to the overview, I just focused on the descriptions. You'll see it shows you if you're above the line, which means you're too heavy, or below the line, which is too light. These, it doesn't matter that you're too heavy, because in both cases, the ink's wrong. But in these cases, you can reduce your densities to get to matching values. And then down here, we're showing the tone value for all the colors as well that we have as part of the color bar, which is quite useful. And if I click again on any of these, so let's say click on the black, you see here's my black. I'm in the green. I can get better, but I don't have to. Here's my TVI on the black curve, and here's my SCTV on the black curve. So now we're calculating not only Murray-Davies TVI, but we're also measuring SCTV, which is spot color tone value, which is really useful when we're dealing with spot colors. With spot colors, this is the ISO standard way to define your dot gain for your spots. And ChromaChecker will now iterate a spot color tone curve lookup table to fix your press to get your tone values where they need to be for the given spots, which is typically linear. So ChromaChecker has that capability now. And if I just go back again to the overview, I'll show you these other tabs as well. So this tab is a gamut tab, which shows you your key colors. So you've got yellow in a circle, and yellow's passing, as you can see here. And then you've got a spot color yellow, more of a banana yellow, and that's like right on the edge of passing. It's on this circle. And then you've got your pink and you've got your magenta, and those two are failing, as you see here, as well as the cyan is failing. So this gamut view helps you see what's going on. And then the tone values help you see that you're too heavy on your tone values for your cyan, magenta, yellow, black at the 40 and at the 50 for the magenta. So a very elegant interface here to help you see what's going on. Here's the actual data. So now we're really drilling into the data. So you have the exact LAB values for the reference and the target. And you can add a description on this and to define how this job was done, or if there's any important notes here. We also now support opacity. So I can take my measurement device, measure my paper with a black backing, and will automatically calculate opacity for this paper, which is also quite useful when you're checking the opacity for the white ink. And of course, I can export a PDF or export the whole file as a CXF to go to another system or to go to the customer. And then, of course, we have a timeline view where I can see the history of how this job has worked over time. And you'll see there's some breaks in here because you don't have to measure every color in order to have it record on the timeline, which is another capability of the packaging interface. If you measure your first color and you see it's off, you don't even have to measure the other colors. You just go fix it and then try it again. So it's a real time-saving tool to ensure that you're maximizing your effort. So the packaging interface is much more friendly for an operator in terms of trying to match both ECG colors as well as spot colors. Let's pop back to the presentation, and there's a screenshot of the interface that I just showed you. Let's move into the concept of we're trying to match spot colors, but for digital or ECG, meaning we're going to use builds of CMYK or CMYK orange, green, violet. We're going to make a build to reproduce that color on our given print process. And we can do this in a very automated way using either the Miro 9, the ISIS, or the i1IO, or shortly we're introducing it with the i1 Pro. I've got it on this slide, but that's not quite right yet. It's not ready. But we do have an XY table for the sphere, and that's quite useful. And you don't have to buy the XY table. You don't even have to buy the sphere. We're offering this as a service right now. So if you're printing on foil, where's my foil sample here? Here's my foil sample. If you're doing something metallic background or foil, things like this, even a clear BOP sometimes is quite useful with the sphere. You can send that job to us. We'll put it on the XY table, measured for you at a fraction of the cost you find anyone else to do it. Now, when you're doing this, if you're using, let's say, the Konica Minolta Miro 1 to do the iteration of the spot color lookup table, but you're using an I1 to actually do the spot verification, you need to understand that each instrument measures differently from one another, and ChromaChecker Instrument Inspector tells you what that difference is so that you don't chase your own tail because you're building a profile with one tool or a spot color lookup table with one tool and measuring it with another tool and getting your data in an incompatible state, meaning when you report that the spot color is within one, you might have iterated down to 0.5 with the Miro 9, but when you put an I1 or a Teshcon on it, it might show that it's off by 3 just due to the instrument differences. So you need to understand this. Okay, so the way spot color match works is ChromaChecker makes a PDF, and what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to unplug my I1, and I'm going to plug in my Miro 9, and I'm going to go back to my capture software, and we're going to reconnect to my Miro 9. So there's my Miro 9. You see all the devices we support, quite a few of them. including some devices that are inline. And now I'll log in to my capture. And you'll see at this point, I will have the ability to choose my color match scan tool. So when I click on this color match scan tool, I have the ability to choose my color library, and I'm going to choose my Best Buy brand library, which, by the way, I import this as a CXF file into ChromaChecker. So if we go back to the color inspector, which we're almost right there, right here, if I say add new, this is where I add my CXF file of the brand company. Ideally, if a brand company like Best Buy comes to you and says, hey, we want you to match our colors, they're going to supply you with a CXF file, which is a color exchange file, which with all their brand definitions on it, which you can import directly into ChromaChecker. Once it's in ChromaChecker, then in Capture, you can call that color up, and then you can call up what printer is going to be printing that color. So I'm choosing my Epson, and you'll see all the colors are within 2 delta E. The biggest color difference is the sales red. It's 1.57 delta E. And I can choose any profile in my library here. So I can go to the Idea Alliance extended color gamut profile, and you can see this profile, Tech White, is off by 2.2. All the other colors are within range. And ChromaChecker will actually build the CMYK orange, green, violet builds for all of these colors all at once. And I'm not going to do it for ECG. I'm actually going to do it for my Epson. So we'll just go back to, well, we can choose anything. Here's an iridescent printer. So on the iridescent, all the colors except the dark yellow are within 2 delta E. So this is really useful to know what's in gamut and what's out of gamut. So now when I say start color match, I click and I download the PDF of all these colors. And this color library could be 18 colors, or it could be 18,000 colors. It doesn't matter, because ChromaChecker automatically lays this data out in the form that the measurement device that you've selected can handle it. So if I just open up the color match scan file that I just built, you see here's the Best Buy library formatted for the Miro 9. So I could print that out, I can measure it in, and then as I measure it in, ChromaChecker will tell me how close each of the colors are. Now, to save time, I've shown this in a previous Second Tuesday session live. That was, I think, May of last year. So if you look in our archive of Second Tuesday events off the event tab in our main page, chromachecker.com, you can find that. And what that looks like, and what's key is we build that PDF, which I just showed, but what's real key is that you print this as you print your workflow. You don't want to print this in an unusual way. You want to print this just like you print your normal way. And actually, I'm mistaken. I think we showed the color match scan in probably March of 2024 when we introduced it. And in May 2024, we talked about how to print this through the workflow the same as the job, because this can get kind of confusing based on what your workflow is. Meaning, if I'm going through an ESCO workflow or a GMG workflow or an all-one workflow or a print factory workflow, these all require you to take that PDF and run it the same way you run your job through. So we're capturing the variables coming into the job so that when we iterate the color, it's right. And the beauty of this is every printer drifts, right? Every printer changes. And with ChromaChecker, we have a baseline function that tells you when the printer drifts. But with ChromaChecker, you know that the printer is going to drift. This time to output a target and measure it in and iterate it is literally a minute or two per printer. And you can dial that printer right in if it's capable to like 0.5, 0.3 delta E's. It's just really amazing.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
there was a question.
Yeah.
Does ChromaChecker support fan book creation?
Yeah. ChromaChecker does support fan book creation. Let me get a couple more slides and then I'll show you how that works. So this is again talking about the autogamic colors. So these colors in this Best Buy library, here's another way to look at it. So ChromaChecker tells you what the delta E is. Here I used a visual of ColorThink showing you the spot colors with a real printer gamut and showing you if these dots were inside this gamut, they'd be reproducible. They're outside the gamut and therefore they're not. And you should tell the customer that. So simple steps for the color match scan is you import the CXF of your brand color into ChromaChecker. You choose the library in terms of the capture software, which I demonstrated. Then you print the chart through the same workflow that you do, measure, and then reprint, and it goes through it and it iterates it. So the first time you measure it, it will come back and it will tell you what the delta E is of each of the patches. And then as you go through, let's say, the second iteration or third iteration, it'll show you how good it's getting. So here I've done 3 iterations on the RAL target. The RAL target, talking about swatch books, RAL is a very famous color library that's in Europe. Here's a RAL swatch book. I want to say there's 900, no, there's over 1,000 colors in the swatch book. And what you could do is we just went through and iterated multiple times. It keeps experimenting with different CMYK or CMYK orange green values till it finds the lowest delta E. It remembers that. So even on the next iteration, if the delta E is higher, it knows, well, I got a better result with my previous formula. And as you look at these numbers on this RAL swatch book, you'll see after 3 iterations, everything's down to, and this is on my Epson, by the way, everything's down to like a 0.1 delta E, which is, there's a 0.4 delta E, 0.09 delta E. So in this way, you can iterate a swatch book printed on your printer. And if someone else uses ChromaChecker and iterates the same swatch book, it's going to match to yours. So listen to me, match swatch books that actually match even when printed on different printers in different places in the country. As long as the colors are in gamut, the colors will match. And well, if you've seen us at any of our shows recently, we use this example. This is part of the ChromaSpot library. Now, actually, this is the RAL library. And some of these are laminated, and some of these are glossed over. Some have a dull gloss. And as many of you know, the finishing on the type of gloss or laminate that you put on it changes the color. You put the dull laminate on the print, and then you measure it. ChromaChecker will iterate the spot color lookup table based on the laminate. So now you can get different surface characteristics to match swatch books between locations as well, which is really unique. So that you as a printer can make swatch books multiple locations that you know will match one another based on ensuring that the printers have the sufficient gamut, and you'll be good to go. And I actually have a slide on the swatch book. So from your admin account on the Color Cloud, you choose the library that you want the swatch book for. You select all of them. And that's done by select opposite. That selects all the colors in the library. And then on the bottom, on the right side, there's a fan book tab. And when you click on that fan book tab, it says full, basic, or minimal. So in this way, you can make fan books this way. And what I was showing there is this is the minimal fan book, where it's got just the colors on the page. And notice you can do a cut outline, and you can show the delta E, which is quite helpful. So all these things are very powerful. Great question, thank you. So in summary, our match spot colors closer with our new packaging interface makes it far easier and informative for the operator to dial in the color with help with potentially the ink room to get the color where you need it to be. If you're simulating spot colors on your ECG print or on a digital print, this color match scan, for the price and the accuracy, there's nothing like it. It's so fast, so simple, and when you need to update the lookup table, it's minutes to do that. You just enter the color match tool, color match scan tool, and go through the printing of the PDFs, measuring them, and it shows you how how close you can get. So hopefully you'll take us up on our offer to try ChromaChecker. As always, you can go to our homepage. Let me pop back to the homepage here. So on the homepage of ChromaChecker, back out here, just in review, here's where the second Tuesday is for the second Tuesday events are right here underneath the events page. And here's all the second Tuesdays going back. Yeah, looks like we've been doing it for coming up on 3 years now. And then if you want to try the software out, you can come here to register a new account. We'll set you up with a trial version that you'll be able to actually test out, measure, and see how well ChromaChecker works for your business. And like I said, the ROI is within a week. If you think about reducing and eliminating waste and communicating to everyone in the plant what is acceptable and what isn't, and it prevents that sales guy from saying, hey, I know you can get closer than this. It's like, no, as a company, we've chosen to be, let's say, a 4E factor. Yeah, I can make it closer, but we'd have to charge the customer more, because if I spend more time getting it down to let's say a 3, we lost money on the job, and we're not going to lose money on the job because my future depends on the company being profitable. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're looking at a color conformance platform that you can grow with as a complete quality system for your environment. So I want to thank you guys for the questions. Sorry we ran out of time for any other questions that you might have had, but you can always email me at david@chromachecker.com and submit them, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So thank you. Is there anything else, Beth? Okay.
Sorry, no other questions right now.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay. Hopefully we'll see you next week when we talk about the matching different printers to one another.